even if it's not real, it can still have a real impact on a person. And
like
I think
waifus.
yeah, just like, wait, waifus aren't real? What's up, guys? You are listening to the Nii-San Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Josh Xell Kim, and of course, with me is Crim, the Asian Avenger. How you doing, man?
Yo, I'm doing great. This anime season has been great. And on top of that, you know, lots of sweet new things coming out. We're just getting into the summer, new Marvel movies, Doctor Strange. And so, yeah, like there's a lot, and also new Magic sets. And let's I think one of the most important things is we might have just gotten, well, it's relatively new, a new one-shot.
Yeah, so
manga. This will be our first manga discussion.
This might
episode,
be
right.
I mean, I'm generally not a manga person, but when I heard that this guy who, you know, you may have heard of him or some of the things he's done, Tatsuki Fujimoto, most famous for, I think, Chainsaw Man, which is getting an anime later by Mappa.
That shit's gonna blow up.
It's going to blow up
so hard.
And it was someone in my Twitch chat told me, Jen Axel, he was like, yo, have you read this manga Goodbye Eri? It's a one shot by this guy. And I was like, okay, well, you know, it's a one shot. It feels like I could just sit down for an hour and read it all. And that's what I did. And yeah, so that is going to be the theme of today's episode. We're going to get into that a little bit, especially about the ending, which I think has gotten a lot of people thinking about what it means and what it actually happened. And I think it's just a fun discussion topic in general.
Yeah. And like same here, like Twitch chat just carrying us. Twitch chat also told me, hey, Crim, read this. I'm like, okay.
You know, and then as you reminded me, that's it.
yeah. And then I was like, okay, sure. And then I, you know, like everything else I do, I forget. And then you're like, hey, have you read this? Like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to read that.
We streamers don't have free will. They just listen to their chat. That's how it works.
Yeah. Twitch chat, tell us what to do.
Yeah. Twitch play streamer. So yeah, let's talk about first the news in our sector of the world. I think one of the bigger pieces of news I think that came out recently was about Netflix, and specifically there's been some decisions at Netflix that has a bunch of people reeling. Stocks have dropped immensely for Netflix, which has gotten investors all hot and bothered. And
right.
Netflix has also talked about some decisions that I think that people are not fond of. So let's talk a little bit about it. But yeah, Netflix, they laid off their entire animation division at the company. And whenever layoffs happen, you know some things have not gone well for the company, generally speaking. And so with that news that had come out, and like, yeah, all these shows are going to get canceled, and not for, you know, canceling reasons, just because Netflix, I guess, is running out of money. And I think a lot of people are questioning sort of the decisions that Netflix has made recently. They announced that they might bring ads into their service, and like, man, I just feel like Netflix is just shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again. And it's funny. It's like Netflix had lived long enough to become the villain. So
yeah. It's getting like it, you know, what it did to Blockbuster, essentially, right?
Yeah, it's blockbustering itself.
Yeah, which is hilarious because in its own way, it's like, dude, come on. You know, they increase prices like every 2 weeks, and then they kind of like have this Pikachu shock face, like, how could this happen?
Wow.
Why did we lose like 1 million subscribers out of nowhere? And it's like, do you think it's password sharing? I mean, I'm always right. There's an element of password sharing, sure, but why is there so much password sharing? What do you think that is?
Let me think about that.
We were talking about it earlier. It's the Eric Andre meme where he's like blasting like Hannibal Buress. He's like,
how could he do this? How could this happen?
Yeah. I also love that like it's just like so all right, so we lost out on 1 million subscribers, right? So what's the biggest problem here at Netflix? Well, clearly someone woke up and said, it's just like, it feels like somebody sporadically, the jerk of the knee, it's the animation department. It's always the damn animation department. And it's just like, what?
Anime was a mistake. Animation was a mistake, Crim. Come on. Don't you know this already? I don't...
I don't see how that is true. Like, how is it the animation department? Maybe just don't put out the shows like Black Mass. Those shows, not Black Mass or Midnight Mass. That show sucked. Like, there's like, you know, a bunch of other shows they put out that weren't great. Like, if they just, I like them for taking chances on a lot of the shows that they've taken chances on. Without that, we wouldn't have had Squid Games, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had like some cultural phenomenon. So, as many cultural phenomenons as they've also like kind of had, they've also missed, right? And so that's where like they're kind of trying to recuperate and whatnot. And like I wonder though, like this is a question for you. Do you think so? Like when we say animation, we're not talking like Comey. We're not talking about like that. We're talking about like their dream, like kind of like how they started to wanting to do like DreamWorks kind of like animated movies, right?
Yeah.
Like Pixar stuff.
So when we're talking about Netflix animation, we're talking about their in-house stuff that they produce and they make. And I don't think this will affect licensing, you know, for example, with Comey and anime. So I'm hoping that content-wise, this isn't also a start of them cutting licensing costs and cutting out things like, anime or whatever. Because I think the funny thing about when we look at these decisions of like raising the price, maybe reintroducing ads and all this stuff, it's like they're just trying to squeeze blood from the stone here. And instead of being like, hey, what if we made the money that they're already spending more worth it to them and like, you know, maybe not cut content from their, you know, like it's just very funny to me that they are just trying to squeeze as much money out of people as possible without realizing what's really the biggest problem here. And I think that in comparison to where we were at 10 years ago with all these new streaming services, like everyone and their mom has a streaming service. We have Apple TV, we have Amazon, we have High Dive, we have Crunchyroll. We used to have Funimation. We have like all these different services, and now the competition for things like Netflix is much higher. And I think people are starting to get sick of having to subscribe to so many things, right? Like, I think we're already kind of seeing piracy become more popular again as like, I don't want to have to subscribe to another thing for the next couple of months just to watch one show, right? And then you're stuck with like 5 different subscription services that you're just running per month. And of course, because people don't want to do that, they're going to resort to account sharing and stuff like, yo, I'll be your Netflix guy, Crim, you be my Crunchyroll dude. And then I'll ask the neighbor down the street to share me their HBO Max, you know, and we'll just have this network going. I mean, people are just going to resort to that because that's where TV kind of failed, right? Like TV sort of did the same thing where you're paying for all these things that you don't care about and you're sick of it. And so I think like I'm very curious what the landscape is going to look like in the future for this, and specifically for things like anime and stuff like that. I think we're already getting to a point where anime content wise is very popular, but it is a pain in the ass to find all the different anime that you want to watch, right? Like specifically, I know you and I talked about Papripi Kome, and like that's on High Dive, and that's like a separate service that like doesn't have as much stuff. And yeah, so like competition is good, but also at the same time, just from a consumer standpoint, I'm just like, man, this stuff is getting irritating. All these services like Hulu just already add ads into their content. Like this feels so backwards to me, and I'm very curious where this will all end up.
Yeah, honestly, like same. I think funny enough, what if this all just kind of goes back to like we kind of make our way back towards like cable, right? Because then eventually enough of these, not per se cable, but like something like how they had all the channels under like one monthly subscription. Yeah. Because at some point we're now spending more than we did on cable. Yeah. Right? Because if each subscription is like $15, right? Like I'm paying $15, I think, for Crunchyroll Premium, and I'm okay with that because now they have both Funimation and like Crunchyroll gets a lot of licensing stuff, right? Yeah. But then like, you know, like I couldn't justify High Dive just because like it's like why, right? Like I only have one anime I want to see, right? Yeah. So like this is a little bit of like that going on, and you know, at a point I was questioning my Disney Plus because that was essentially my Mandalorian machine, right? Like that was it.
Yeah.
But then finally Marvel is now hard carrying Disney Plus, right? Like it's just like they're putting out stuff at a rate where like, okay, it keeps you like in the loop between movies. Mm-hmm. So they have show, movie. And that's fine. Like I'll pay that because it's a yearly subscription. I'll pay the yearly $60, right? That's fine. So, but now once you start adding in more subscription services, I'm now paying more for cable than cable, right? So at what point do they go, okay, well, you know what? How about this? We have a brilliant idea. We merge everything again. And you can get it all through like NBC or something like that.
I just don't think that'll happen because the overlords are too greedy, right? They're not going to want to be like, oh yeah, like Disney Plus is never going to be like, yo, Crunchyroll, let's hold hands together. Disney Plus is just going to come down with their lawyers and be like, I'm going to buy you and you're going to just be under our, under our wing. So like,
I would love that, by the way. Like Disney Plus and Crunchyroll, Funimation, all that were under one. That's kind of like, okay, I don't think I need anything else, right? Like what else am I going to buy? What else am I going to watch?
I have problems with it just from a
monopoly standpoint. Yes.
However, from a consumer standpoint, like that might be just nicer, right? If everything was just under one thing. I do think that what is most likely and more likely going to happen is piracy is just going to be bigger. And like people have already said how like fan subs are getting to a point where they're faster than these networks. They're just as good, if not better. Like lots of people, especially in anime. What I was going to say was like in Netflix in particular, people are very unhappy with how they've been subbing the anime. Like I remember when Komi first came out, people were upset that half the things that she wrote down on the cards and on the chalkboard weren't translated. However, in fan subs, they go through and they actually translate everything so you can actually understand all the visual information that's presented in front of you. And
they changed that real quickly, though. The next couple episodes, I think it was like episode 3, everything got translated.
They do and they don't, and that's the thing is like I think Netflix gets shit on more so than some of these other services because of their inconsistent quality with subs. So I guess my point is piracy, I think it might come back depending on if these companies can figure their stuff out, because consumers are just going to hit a limited point. I think in general, we're getting to I think the world, like the average person is getting pretty sick of companies announcing their biggest profit year yet. And then they increase prices on everybody. And they're like, yeah, stick it to you. You're going to buy
think of
our
any
stuff.
companies that have done that recently. So.
Nothing, that we play nothing like
sure.
that. It's just so ridiculous. Right. And I think for sure people are going to change their habits because everyone's got to make ends meet. So, So
they're still a business, so it makes sense, I guess. Yeah, they got to keep up. So,
in theme of capitalism and stuff, funny news came out recently. Elon Musk has officially bought Twitter. I'm not sure if the purchase has gone through. I just saw an article saying that Twitter has accepted the bid, so that now Elon Musk is the primary shareholder in Twitter, giving him
$billion.
Yeah, 45 billion, dude.
45 billion?
Yeah, I believe it's 45.
44 billion. Whatever, man. I'll never even see 1 billion. So I'm not even worried about that.
$44 billion. I think sometimes these numbers get so large that it's hard to imagine what it feels, like what that number really entails. And doing some quick maths, okay, if you make, let's say you're a pretty wealthy guy, you make 6 figures, all right? You make 6 figures a year, and you want to make $44 billion so that you can eventually one day also own Twitter. In order for that to happen, Let me just do this correctly here. You would have to be earning $100K for over 440,000 years.
So you only need to be a vampire and live and be immortal, and then you can make as much as Elon spent.
On Twitter.
The best part is, that's not even like all of his money.
Yeah. he's got some left in the tank, you know. There's always money in the banana stand. And, yeah. It's sometimes when I hear what billionaires are up to these days, it just blows my mind because again, I think people just like to throw numbers out there, billion, million, whatever. And when you get down to realistically, you know, like a number that we can relate to, like $100,000 is a lot of money per year, and we can relate to that number. We're like, oh yeah, if I earned 100,000, I'd be a pretty rich guy. And for it to take basically enough time for the sun to maybe collapse on itself and engulf the earth before you'll actually have the $44 billion, like it's just so mind blowing to me. And it's so stupid too, because I don't understand why Elon Musk would do this, and I think people are postulating that like Elon Musk wants to do it so that he has control over a major social media network, essentially buying out his way of free speech. I don't know. I don't really understand the politic like aftermath that this will happen. It's just one of those things where it's just a staggeringly big number. Rich billionaires, they are on some stuff.
They're on another level.
Clearly
doing things
very clearly. And I just wish the world was in a better spot, man. You know, like $44 billion probably could have been better spent anywhere else, but you know, whatever, man, whatever. I'm just going to cry into like the expensive magic cards that I buy that are sometimes over $5. And I'm like, oh, that's like a Subway sandwich, man. That's like a Big Mac.
Legitimately, Elon Musk is, for those that don't know, superior Iron Man. It's that is the alternate timeline Iron Man, where he's rich, narcissistic the way that he normally is, but evil. He is actually superior Iron Man. Like
Doctor Strange did this thing, and he's like sitting there, like waving his hands, and he's like, "Oh no, I went to the wrong present. Instead of Iron Man, we have Elon Musk. No! God damn it, Spider-Man. I told you not to interrupt the spell."
This is perfect marketing. I can't believe they went this far to market a multiverse of madness.
Oh, my God. So, anyways.
But, on top of that, I believe we have some other news. I believe something Final Fantasy 14 related.
Oh yeah, so by the time this video comes out, we'll have been a week into the new patch in Final Fantasy 14, which is releasing a ultimate raid, which is pretty big news because there hasn't been one in 2.5 years actually after they canceled the last one, and so I'm really excited about it. I'll be working my ass off trying to get that clear over the next couple months, and yeah, I don't know, I'm excited.
I'll go in.
See what it's like, test the waters.
Yeah, I don't know how much of my resources I'll be committing to it to clear, but I'll go in, I'll have fun, and then I'll get mad about doing it, and then I'll not want to do it, and then I'll come back and do it. You know what I mean?
Okay, let's move on.
I can feel the stress inside me as I think about it. I'm like, oh man, this is not gonna be fun.
But the shiny weapon, imagine. And I feel like the title, if I was to guess what it's going to be called, it's going to be like the fiercest legend. Don't you want to be the fiercest legend?
No.
Okay, fair.
That's like saying, do I want to be the $44 billion guy, or am I just okay? I'm okay with just being adventurer Crim. All right, so that's like $1 million.
Come on, man! Don't you want to buy Final Fantasy 14 Twitter? Like, you could do it, man.
Twitter.
Yeah.
All right. So then lastly, talking about companies that love and that has been increasing their profits every year and then also increasing the prices to go with it, we have Magic's new set, Capenna.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited about it because, first off, this is a new idea. If you don't know, if you don't play Magic the Gathering, this is a plane where there's 5 mob families, demon mobs. So there's a cat demon, there's a demon, there's a devil demon. I don't know. So at some point it just gets redundant, right? The amount of creature types that are happening. Like, yeah, okay, sure, it's a demon. You got it. And the thing about this specifically is we haven't seen some of the shards since forever. Because for the last, since cons, right, we've seen nothing but the color combination of blue, black, green, right? So you had Sultai, you had Mardu, you had the whatever they're cons. I don't know what they're called. I forgot what they're called. But no, shards is like, I think... Like Esper and all of that. Those are shards. Okay,
those are shards.
And then
wedges,
and then
wedges.
Wedges. There it is. The Tarkir wedges. You saw a lot of the wedge support, but now we're going back to the shards. Mm-hmm. We've got Grixis on the menu, Esper on the menu, and then I don't know, the other ones have green. So like the thing here is I just so I brought up the 2 important families. They're under new names: the Obscura, which is Esper, Maestros, which is Grixis. I genuinely actually don't know the other names. I don't care. Like, I just legitimately do not care. I think it's like Cabaretti is Naya. Yep. I remember that.
And then the Brokers is banned.
Sure. Okay. Sure, you got it. and so this is cool because most importantly, Xell did a pre-release. I've acquired some of the Magic cards. And the new set... I've got a Xander here, a Lord Xander, who's done by a Vietnamese artist, by the way. And I think you got a Rigo, I believe, or something like that. I forgot the name. And
I have this guy.
I'm pretty excited, like the way these came out, because these cards, these crime families, all of this is actually a pretty cool plane and whatnot. And I love these cards because they have like this Art Deco style, which I don't like the Art Deco kind of like theme. That's never been appealing to me, but. Which is why when I saw these cards like online when they were previewed, for those that don't know, I'm like holding up the card right now, the showcase version, or showcase, I don't know, the fancy gold border side stuff, right? I don't know what they're under the name of now, but I'm holding them up, and these. When you saw them online, they did not look that good. I just dropped it.
But it's fine.
Oh my god! Oh god! Slightly played. SP. So I'm just I wasn't a fan of them when I saw them online, and then I saw them in person, and now I'm in love because the texturing on these, like this is a different card. The texturing's nice because like the foiling is perfectly in the center on the art, but not fully. And then the border, the gold plated border is like the only thing foil there, but there's a thickness to it. And so I think this is to help prevent the warping, maybe. And I think that finally Magic is understanding how Pokemon's been doing it. Like, my favorite thing about Pokemon is the way they foil their cards.
Yes.
There's a grainy inlays, and the way the cards are printed and foiled, they don't warp like Magic cards. Like, if I leave a Magic card alone from any of the recent sets, like Neon Dynasty, it becomes a Pringle like in a matter of like 20 minutes, right? But Pokemon cards figured it out, right? So I feel like this is moving in the right direction. But there is a downside to this. Are these cards thicker? That's what all of this boils down to. I think these are actually considerably thicker, or maybe it's just me, but I feel like they are. And they have like a stiffness to them, right? So I bet you, if I go to a tournament, I might get DQ'd because I mix and match my artworks all the time. So I love having 4 different ones. But if I can have a judge continuously cut to my one Void Ren that's like the fancy gold border, my ass is DQ'd. So...
Yeah, I completely agree with you that, like, I love that Magic is continually iterating on foils and, like, basically what is essentially bling, right, in Magic. Because, like you said, Pokemon does it amazingly. Oh my god. I don't play Pokemon, but sometimes I just look up my favorite Pokemon in trading card form because the art on the cards are so beautiful. Yeah. And I think that they really hit it out of the park in terms of the way these gilded foils, I think is what they're calling them.
There it is. Gilded foils.
They're just gorgeous in person. They're like, this whole new Capenna stuff isn't really my jam. Like, I don't really care about like mobster gangster stuff that much. Like film noir is cool, I guess, but like I wouldn't say I'm a fan of it just generally. However, I am a fan of how these cards look. So they are really, really nice. And I don't know. I'm excited to maybe crack a couple packs and see if I get anything cool. But new Capenna, new Magic set. Anything that you're like really excited about in new Capenna, like mechanics wise?
Mechanics wise, not necessarily. There's just like cards that I like. I think shield counters are an interesting thing, but that's just because that's Divine Shield from Hearthstone. So it's just like it's just like funny to see like oh, I've seen this somewhere before. It's literally it's just Hearthstone. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And there are some things that break the game or has done things that the game hasn't done before, like Luxior, Giada's Gift, the thing that allows you to equip the sword to a planeswalker and then turn them into a creature.
Yeah.
Right. And so like you have that, and you combine that with a new 3 enchantment where counters on any permanent can be moved around. I forgot the name of it, but it's a 3-mana white enchantment, and you can pay like 4 or 5 mana, and then you could activate it by just like moving counters around. But like if something with a counter leaves the battlefield, you can put on something else.
Yeah.
So that changes things. You can put shield counters on planeswalkers and et cetera, et cetera. So just some cool things that I imagine will break the game, at least like mechanically. And I'm excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So, okay, with that, I think we have gone through our news section of the podcast, and now it's time to rewind a little bit and talk about the main subject of today, which is Goodbye Eri. And again, just to kind of go over what Goodbye Eri is, it's by Tatsuki Fujimoto, like I mentioned before. He's most well known, I think, for Chainsaw Man, but he's done a lot of stuff, and this is just the latest. Yeah, like he's like from his serialized stuff, obviously there's Chainsaw Man, there's Fire Punch, but in terms of one-shots, he's got like basically a dozen other one-shots, and I know a couple of them people have said really, really good things about, so this is just the latest one-shot that is really creating waves, and this was released on April 11th, so it's been a couple weeks now, and you can actually, if you have not read this yet, you can read this for free online. So you should just do that because it's great. It's like 200 pages, which in manga time is like less than an hour. I don't know. Yeah. It's like
40, 30 minutes.
So yeah, you should go and watch that. And so do you want to do the synopsis? Should I do the synopsis?
Why don't you lead us in?
Okay. So I think Goodbye Eri is it's very interesting. Like just from the get-go, the narrative is done not in a kind of like I guess like a typical way. So the synopsis is kind of hard to talk about. But basically, you follow the story of Yuta, who is currently struggling to come to terms with his mother's death. And to do so, he basically created a vlog movie, a movie from his point of view over the events. And he creates this movie about his mother passing away. And he shows it to his school at a film festival, or like a talent show thing. And basically it bombs because he had an explosion happen at the hospital in his movie, and everyone's like, what the heck is wrong with you, right? And eventually he meets this other girl named Eri, and she sort of leads him down this path of like, hey, I think your movie had some interesting things. I just think you need to workshop some stuff. And so they go on this sort of I guess adventure together where he learns about movies, he learns about who Eri is, who's this kind of mysterious girl, and yeah, I guess that's kind of it. And I think what makes this one shot really interesting is that everything is done kind of in through the POV of Yuta, because like again, the movie style that he's going for is his POV, and so he's just constantly recording what's happening around him, and so that brings us to the ending, which is really unique, I would say. And I think for anyone who hasn't read Goodbye Eri at this point of the podcast, you should go read it because it's going to be hard for me to explain the ending. But essentially, we get to the end, and the writer has done this really unique thing where you're not actually sure what is real anymore.
Right.
And I think that's when you find out that the narrative that you've been reading through might not be a reliable, I guess like the writing term for it is an unreliable narrator. Like when you find out the narrator is unreliable, it just calls to questions about what is real, what isn't real, and like what really happened in the ending of Goodbye Eri. And I think that's what we want to start today's conversation with.
Yeah. And like, obviously the one thing that was like really well done about this too is like a point about this like One Piece, this one shot is
I love One Piece.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you do. I know you do. This one shot is that also the way that Yuta films his mom, because his mom requests that he films her, right?
Yeah.
And then that's when he turns it into the movie. But so like she requests that he films her, and when he does, the one thing that the show he does is he leaves out all the bad. Right, so this is why, like, I think this is something that's pretty important for the rest of the story too, because like when you get to the end, right, he kind of like it shows you what actually happened in between filming with him and his mom, why he couldn't be there, and it was hard for him to come to grips with watching his mom die on camera, filming his dad crying and all this stuff, right? So finally, when he gets to the end, and he ends it in the classic Yuta fashion where it ends with an explosion, right? But like Eri is supposedly dead by this point, right? She's died, and now so he's like, all right, well, I'm down in the dumps. I'm gonna, today's the day. I'm gonna end it today, right?
Yeah.
So before he goes back to the same room where him and Eri, because before all this, him and Eri watched movies every day. To it was like 3 to 4 movies every day so that he could finally understand what film was about, right? And so he could make his own. And that's where he proposes the idea, to Eri that, hey, why don't we make a movie, right? I'll do it the same way. I'll kind of base it on myself, and we're gonna have it so but instead of Eri, he's going to meet a vampire girl, right? And this vampire girl, who is clearly has no idea how long she's been there and how much time she's got. And through that, right, eventually she passes on, right? And like the reason why all this matters is because this is a little bit tough. Why it's like tough to explain the ending, right? Because there's a lot that happens before all of it. But like the reason why it's weird and why you can't trust what's real and what's not is because Eri passes on. Then he talks about like how he didn't show everything. It's shown that he didn't show everything that was being filmed, like the in between the scenes and all that stuff. And so then he goes back to this place, right, where it all started, where they watched the movies together. And he's like, all right, I'm going to end it here. Eri's there. And then it's like, wait, you're dead. At this point, Yuta's like 40 or something like that. And like, cause like they meet in like middle school or high school or something. And then now he comes back when he's like 30 or 40 and she's there, hasn't aged. And she looks exactly the same, and she's watching movies, and she explains to him like, hey, that's previous me. See, I'm actually a vampire, and I've lived, and every time I die, I come back and I have to rewatch this movie I've rewatched this movie you've made of me, so that this way I can remember who my like past self was. And that's why I always remember who you are, right? And then that's when he goes, and that's the last time I saw her. And then he walks out the building, and then it explodes, right? Like exactly how it starts, right? And so this is where the issues. There's so many. It's not issues, but like it's where my trust issues come in here with what's real, right? Because is Eri the vampire? Is she actually a vampire? Was that movie? Because his dad is like, oh, you always like adding a twist of fantasy to everything you do, right? And his dad, by the way, is a key actor, which is why there's a theory I have about this. But yeah, so is Eri real? Did she ever exist? Was she a vampire? Did she die? Is she still alive? Is she actually just a vampire? And did he really? Because like the explosion part makes me believe that she was not real, like she was not there, and that he did die, and that was the end of that. Or the explosion tells me that this is all a movie. This whole Eri thing has been in movie all the way up to the end, and the dad plays an older Yuta, who is
you think the
to play.
dad is interesting.
Like, yeah. So that's what I think this is, because the explosion makes it so cheesy that I don't understand what could have happened to make him explode the building and walk out, right? So that's why I believe the ending isn't real, and this is all part of the movie. We're all in a simulation, and that it's the dad, because his dad, which we left out. Again, really read it, because we are jumping some parts here, but really read it. And if you followed and if you've kept along this far, the dad is an actor. He was an actor, so he helps them film certain parts. And they did that scene, by the way, in the manga is brilliant. When it's like, all right, he kind of tells Eri to get out of the house. He's the disappointed dad. Stay away from my son. He's like, did I do that part right? And I'm like, oh my God, that was acting. That was such a good writing scene. Like, I love that. I love the twist on that. The twists in the manga are great, or the short read. And so yeah, that's my theory on the end. I think it's the dad playing an older Yuta. That's all a movie.
Yeah. So I think what's so cool about why this, because I think the author left everything up to interpretation, and I think that's sort of the magic of the one shot. And I love how from the very first panel it tries to mess with your perspective. Like in the very, very beginning, when you're watching his movie, you don't know that it's a movie. And so you're suckered into it. And then the explosion happens. And then it's like, oh, we pan back and we're in the audience just like everyone else is. And we're like, okay, what the heck did I just, what is this? Right. And I just thought from that moment, you already knew things were going to get weird because and so when I try to interpret this, because again, I don't think there's a wrong or right answer. I think this is fully up to everyone's interpretation. But I think that the theme of the manga itself is about reality and how things are remembered. And I think that's like one of the major themes is how we choose to remember things and how we choose to take those things that we remember and place them onto things that we consider real. And so I'm going to talk about like a couple moments that reinforce that theme. First of all, his mother, so the main character Yuta is forced to record everything because the mom wants to have her last moments recorded, and she was a producer. Again, more details to this story that we keep just like jumping from place to place on. But his mom is a producer for a film, and she has him film her in a very specific way. And we learn later on that she has him do this because she knows that she isn't the greatest mom ever. She's asking a lot out of her son to do this pretty cruel thing, if you ask me, to like record your mother's death and like just be like, yeah, okay. But the moment the dad comes in and he's like, well, you made this beautiful movie of your mother, and sure, it doesn't have everything that your mother is, but now we get to remember her in this way that we love, right? And it happens again with Eri, right? Where he gets close with Eri, we find out Eri's dying, she finally passes away, and he releases that movie, and we talk to Eri's friend who is like, man, you really only showed certain parts of Eri, and the main character's like, well, what'd you think of that? And she's like, you know what? I liked it, and it makes you remember the good things. And so it's funny how the entire theme of the manga for me really is about how we choose to remember things, and how sometimes, even if it's not real, that version that we perceive as real in our memory can be an improved version on the real, but that's not a bad thing in my opinion, right? And so like for me, this whole one shot from the perspective of Yuta, I guess that's up for argument, right? I mean, right, and that's the debate, right?
Yeah.
And I think what makes this ending brilliant is it ties in those themes of like, okay, so now we've watched Yuta in throughout this movie, and like, what is real and what did we learn from it? And is that the real version of Yuta that we saw? And like, I don't know. I just, again, I'm just marveling at how this author just made this sort of masterpiece one shot that just completely just takes your brain, puts in a blender, and forces you to drink it. And so,
and also tugs at your heartstrings really
it's so good.
Like I was pretty much like tearing up at the opening until the explosion. And I was, wait, what happened? I was like,
it just takes you for an emotional loop. And again, I think the ending is similar to it, but the way I interpreted it was that I have several versions that I'm thinking. One is that Eri really is a vampire, and the narrator is not as imperfect as we thought, and so I think like the explosions are fake, but Eri is real, and we're seeing him sort of like move on from the idea of Eri, and it's like the explosions are representative of new chapters in his life, and so like because that there is no like emotionally speaking with people, right? There isn't ever an aha moment when you get over trauma, right? Like it's not like one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, my trauma has disappeared. But it's represented here in his movies through an explosion. That's like my interpretation of it. And so him meeting Eri, him meeting his mom, and these sort of brutal deaths that created a lot of trauma and hurt within like our main character, he's only able to really come to terms with them through these events that have transpired and through his films. And so the explosions and that's why like when you see that last panel and he's walking away from that explosion, he looks so self-satisfied.
He's happy. Yeah
like and he feels I guess like more whole, I guess, after it all. And so I think that the explosions are fake, but they represent something very important to him. And so I choose to believe that Eri is a real vampire. Whether that's even possible or not, I have no idea, right? Because like, again, the blur between what's real and what's not is so masterfully done that like I could also believe that
they're
Eri
seamless.
Yeah,
so, like the way the every bit of the story, like transition between Eri and what you think could be real, what could not be, is seamless.
Yeah. And so again, I think it just comes down to your interpretation of it, and if the case that Eri is also part of the fantasy, because again, Yuta always says that like his dad, when talking about Yuta's films, always says like, oh, you always like flourish things, and so it's possible that this whole thing was just a movie, and this whole thing was just acted out. And even Eri herself is just another character in this movie that we're watching, and none of it's real. But even if it's not real, it was a good story, and that's how we'll remember it. And I think that's also an interesting interpretation, because that also follows kind of along the themes of like, even if it's not real, it can still have a real impact on a person. And
like
I think
waifus.
Yeah, just like, wait, waifus aren't real? So anyways, like oh God. Don't tell me Santa's not real.
Wrestling is real, dude. Don't worry. Wrestling
Wait, what?
is real. Yeah,
you're telling me
real,
that's
dude.
not... Wait, what? That was never
real,
called
dude.
into question. Why are you saying
right.
that? Why are you saying that? That's weird.
Right.
Why are you being weird about it?
I'm being weird. That's on me. That's on
when
me.
the Undertaker threw Kane through a table,
Undertaker
20 feet high.
died, dude. He died and came
resurrected.
back and started wrestling. Yeah, and resurrected.
He's like Jesus.
He's pretty much
It's
IRL
real.
Jesus.
Yeah, and he just chooses to wrestle for our benefit.
I just don't know how we thought that was real.
But yeah, I think again, both of those interpretations are really interesting to me, and those are where my mind gravitated to for it, because I don't know. I'll keep repeating this. I love how the author messes with the concept of what's real. And I think I don't know. I think that's super cool. It reminds me of, there's an arc in Monogatari, specifically talking about, it's actually called, the arc is called Niisan Monogatari, which literally translates to like the story of fake. And a lot of the storytelling in that is about how even things that are fake can, because that they can be perceived as real, like they have real power. Like even fakes have real power. It's like, I guess in magic card terms, even a proxy, if it's, done well, can be looked at as a real card. And so like,
I mean, isn't that how like urban legends and things like that too? Like that, like the theory and like, all of that behind urban legends, like you believe it enough, it could be real.
Yeah, like it could be. I'm not really sure if Bigfoot is real or.
Bigfoot's real, dude.
No.
No, Bigfoot's real, dude.
Well, is it not just is he more real than Undertaker? I don't know.
Yeah.
He is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're reconfirming that, like, between
and for the
Undertaker and Bigfoot.
Well, yeah, no, we are. Like, I don't see why is that funny? Like like
how about the Tooth Fairy, Crim? Like, where does that rank?
Okay, now you're being weird. Okay, now
how
now
about
you're being
Santa?
weird, okay,
and waifus.
Santa is technically real. He exists in the mall. Santa is your parents, so he technically is real. Just saying, but Nessie, dude, Nessie could be real, dude. UFOs, dude. Okay. And on the topic of today's episode, are things real or not? I'm just not gonna tell you if I actually think these are real.
Yeah,
are they?
I'm kind of curious what your perspective on like my interpretation is, and like if you were to nitpick what you think of like the whole idea of fake and real, like I'm sort of curious what your take is on that.
So if I were to pick at the real and what's not, I like strictly talking about on your take or through the show, like
just in general, because I think we're in agreement that feels like a major theme of the one shot. So I'm kind of curious to hear what you have to say about it.
There's like layers of everything that's going on. It's like what's real, and then there's what's real, what's not real, and then there's like also, is it okay, to like remember things a certain way and leave out the bad, right? Like as I'd mentioned earlier, one thing you had brought up is, his mom wasn't great. His mom asked him to do a pretty messed up thing. Eri wasn't great at all points, right? And she was sick. She had all these things attached to her too. So, but like you want to leave that out, and so I want to lightly touch up on that too, where I think. Personally, I think it's good to remember the bad. I think it's good to remember the bad because I think that's something that levels you and your thought process on a lot of things, right? Because it's like if you were to like run back to like when people are like, oh, that ex boyfriend girlfriend I had, they were great to me. It's like, why did that end? Were they great to you? They you weren't great at certain levels, at certain parts. You're leaving out the bad and remembering the good, right? So I think it's better to remember the bad with it. So that's kind of just like an ideology thing, or kind of like a philosophy in life kind of thing. So I think it's good to remember the bad, and then on top of that, I do think it's good, like the fact that there was. The real and what wasn't real in the one shot was like, oh my God, I was constantly freaking out. I was like, okay, is this real? Like, so did Yuta actually have a family? Did he lose the family? Right. And so, because at some point, it's flash forward a couple of years. It's a little before he commits suicide, right? And it's just like, okay, well, is the family real? He apparently lost his family in a car crash, and that's what led him back to where he's like, okay, well, you know what? Today's the day. I've lost everything. I've hurt too much, and so I think at the end of the day that like the way they wove that in and out of the story was so well done. But at the end there, like what you had mentioned, like he looked completed. But I think the reason why he looks complete and happy is because the hurt, right, and all of that. Like there's two theories. The hurt was so immense that he's like, you know what? the big event, the explosion in his life is that he's, he axed himself there, right? And I think so. Like that's his closing thoughts. That lets you know that he ended it there. And then on top of that, if not, then this is all a movie, like I had mentioned. I really, because like the similarities between the older Yuta and his dad are uncanny, right? You just put some long hair on him, like a little bit longer hair.
I'm trying to think like what that means though. Like,
well, that means that all of it, this is just a movie. Like this, like the ending is a movie. Like everything that you had seen up until then is fake. Like there's parts of Yuta woven into it because like every artist, every bit of content creation, everything we do, we put a little bit of ourselves in there, right? So you do see it's where it pulls some stuff from reality, but at the end of it all, this was just a movie.
Right. Okay. Do you think it's just the end that was like, how much of you think was specifically scripted out by, this theoretical Yuta, right? Because like,
right.
Did he show a film that bombed at his school festival, or was that also just all part of Yuta's spell? Like, how far deep are we going to get with like how he's interpreting
beginning
this?
To end.
Beginning to end. So everyone's in on it. Everyone's in on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think everyone has to be in on it because, okay, it just feels like at first I thought it was real, right? My meter shifted back and forth as I kept reading, right? But it wasn't until the vampire part I'm like, this is an end. This is all a movie, right? Because he leaves little hints and tidbits with the dad mentioning you love splashing fantasy into everything you do. Mm-hmm. It down to the point where he shows like he's watched a lot of movies, right? So the one thing about movies is that you got to learn to tug at the heartstrings. You got to pull on them, right? So you show the beautiful parts, you show the sad parts, you show it all, right? So like if you think it that way, then in a way the movie tries to tell you that it's not always good. You got to remember the bad to go with it, right? And then that's why he shows you like the good and the bad, and then that's why it all ends the way it does.
So with that interpretation, the sort of ending message is like you have to take the good with the bad. Is that kind of where you're thinking?
That's pretty much how I took it, like, and how I walked away from it without the explosion, right? Like I saw that, like, yes, there's layers here. You got to take the good with the bad, and you can't just choose to have selective memory on like how you remember things. And then on top of that, like what's real and what isn't, and this is where Yuta is putting that to the test, right? And he's throwing the fantasy in there to test the readers or the watchers of his movie, like, well, she's a vampire.
Yeah.
Right? Like because that feels like something in a drawing board of like a storyboarding room where you're just like, okay, but now throw in vampires, throw in aliens, right? So like, you know what I mean? Like it just feels like how you would like be on the writing room floor of like a movie and you want to get a twist going, right? And I think the beauty of it is because I specifically think it's all a movie because of how much they emphasize that Yuta had to go sit down with Eri, watch movies every day, billions of movies, until he can make a movie.
Would you say 44 billion movies?
44 billion movies. That's a lot of movies. But right, like that's how I saw it. I don't know. What do you think? Is that off base? It checks.
I think like what I was saying with my interpretation earlier, with like the whole thing being a fake. I think it aligns a little bit with what I was saying earlier too. I think what changes in the interpretation is in the interpretation, because I think like for me, the idea of remembering the good and the bad wasn't as strong for me, I guess, more so than how I felt like the ending message felt that even things that aren't real can have real impact, is like how I chose to think of the messaging, because like I don't know if he, I guess like when I think about it, like I don't really know if he's trying to show that like, hey, hiding the bad is a bad thing, and now I've learned from that. And to me, it was more like,
or it's not that it's a bad thing. It's more of like that's a reality. You're leaving parts of reality out of it, right?
okay,
And so, like, and again, because I think this, like, again, this is really stemming from the fact that he had to watch movies, so many movies, and so he wanted to make a movie, and what makes a good movie, right? So, like, it's got to have all these things, the twists, the twists and turns, and the emotional roller coasters, right, and the lovable characters,
Yeah.
And so, and like, there's the conflict, and then there's, you know, like, he needs to learn how to make the movie, right? So, this kind of, that's why I believe everything from beginning to end was a movie, and they really emphasized that in that middle part where he had to learn how to make a movie.
Yeah.
And the people around him in his life were always attached to movies. His dad being an actor, his mom a producer. So that's why I felt like this was all a way for him to learn how to make a movie and to show you, like, not that like fake things can't have impact, because that's still true, and that happens like with movies. Like, movies impact us in some ways, and so like it can still be done through that way. And that's why I loved this short, because I thought it was like him just showing us the movie that he learned how to make at the end of it all.
Yeah. No, I think that's a super valid interpretation. Dude, honestly, this was one of the most thought-provoking mangas I've read in a hot minute, and I think pretty much everyone who reads this will probably go through a similar, like, is this real? Is this fake? What does that mean? What is that? What is life?
Yeah.
You know?
What's in the box?
And I think that's really what, again, I just love this one shot so much. I think this was such a good read, and I hope if by the time you guys are reading or listening to our podcast, like, I hope you guys have read it, because it really deserves a read. And it was just a really, really special piece of media, I think. So
yeah. And I really could see the way this was, like, first off, like, the way this was written, right, and like the art style, all of this feels like it could be a movie, like an animated movie, if you wanted, right?
Dude,
like,
I think this could be a real movie. You know,
yeah,
like,
even yeah.
I legitimately think this would have made a fantastic IRL movie. You know, like,
Yeah.
it's just done
As
with such a
opposed to, like,
style,
Death Note and
almost as good as Death Note. You know,
oh yeah, nothing can beat that.
nothing can beat that for what it is. God, I can't compliment that show
For whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever they tried to do with that thing.
We just couldn't comprehend it, you know. So we're just not there yet.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we'll get there. We'll get there.
But no, I just, wow, I'm so excited for Chainsaw Man. Like, this was, to me, like, the best. I mean, the Chainsaw Man trailer that had come out was already like a big wow factor in terms of, but like, the fact that this author could make, I know nothing about Chainsaw Man, but when I watch the trailer, it reminds me of a battle shonen, just like darker themes. And to know that this author is also capable of not only handling action, but handling this type of one shot where it's just all drama and narrative. I mean, this guy has such a bright future. He's younger than us. And I think, like, he has such a special way of communicating. I think, like, for me, like, a film person would love reading this manga, because I feel like this is almost like a love story to film in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think, like, yeah, this guy's a genius. Let's put it that way. I think the story was genius. I think the guy is genius. I think this whole thing was so smart.
I thought it was masterful.
Yeah.
100% masterful. Like, this is like a very well written piece of like manga, whatever you want to call it. I think it's something that I just, you know, sometimes you kind of can forget when you're just reading comics, when you're reading manga. Like, it's always, manga and comics have always been kind of written off, if you would.
Yeah.
As like, oh, it's not a real medium of literature. You can't really get good stories. You can't get good X, Y, and Z from it.
Right.
And I think this just reminds you that that's not true. Like, there's good stories when they want it to be, and then, you know, there's the fun stories, right? And so, like, this shows you the writer definitely is good at what they do, though, because, like, reading Chainsaw Man, they knew what they were doing. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. And I think that this is just, oh my God, I cannot believe this was like the best 30 to 40 minute read I've had.
Yeah.
And it's better than some actual books. So
This was transcendent. It really was. Just to again wrap things up a bit, I just think this was one of the coolest reads in a long time. I've not felt so deeply about something I've read. Like the last thing I read before Goodbye Eri was Solo Leveling, which is just like turn brain off, just like wow, cool man does cool things, explosions. I mean, it's like Michael Bay but manga, right?
Yeah.
And then this. And it's just so raw and emotional and so real, right? In the most fake way possible. I loved it. And it reminds me a lot about the things I love about stuff like Oyasumi Punpun and just real human stories. Like even though there's so much fantasy and stuff built into the into Goodbye Eri, like the ending emotion from it, you feel like there's like a higher thing to it. I don't know. It was incredible. So I can't stop gushing about it.
Yeah, same. I strongly recommend to anyone. Like I think the last thing I read was Sakamoto Days. So like
also
very different, very real. So this is what you want, and I think this is just not. This is also like what I enjoy about just like art and lots of like mediums like movies and all that stuff, music. Is when it's able to like kind of get this like thought provoking or like these feelings that you just wouldn't expect to like feel normally, right? And think about normally. So this is the beauty of it, and I think this is a masterfully written one shot, and it gets right to the point, and it does a good job. It does a very good job.
Yeah. So anyways, with that said, I think that's going to wrap up today's topic. Again, I know we said this a billion times. Please read the one shot. It's amazing. You can just read it anywhere. And I would love to see in the comments, like, what other interpretations are out there, and like, what did you guys, after reading Goodbye Eri, what did you guys feel about the story, and what resonated with you? Did our interpretations, like, what did you guys feel about those as well? Like, I'm so curious because, again, I don't think there is a wrong answer to this stuff, and I think it's all very thought-provoking. So, anyways, again, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. I hope this was enjoyable, and as always, please support our stuff, like, comment. You can even just say whatever. You don't have to get all five-head about it. You can just also say, hi, Crim. Hi, Josh. Josh has better taste in anime than Crim. Comments
Josh
like that.
Josh smells weird visually.
I do smell weird visually. It's true.
You visually smell weird, dude.
Like salami, fresh off the counter.
Like you would smell like salami, dude.
So
I don't know if I'm offended. I can't tell.
I can't tell.
Hurts.
That's yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Peace.